Maren Ashvyr was ordered to carry the dead dragon's heart with bare hands, not with tongs, not with priest cloth, not with the copper cradle used for noble witnesses. Bare hands so the whole hall of embers could watch the heart remain cold and prove what everyone already believed about her. Ash-bound, no fire soul, no inner flame for dragons to hear. The name had followed her since childhood like smoke that never lifted. In Verhold, even the poorest child was born with some spark. A kitchen boy could warm a coal between his palms. A stable girl could calm a feverish hatchling by humming near its shell. A noble could bleed into a bowl and make dragonfire rise blue, gold, or white, depending on the strength of the house. Maren had nothing. When she stood too close to dragonflame, it dimmed. When she entered the hatching vaults to scrub ash, sleeping eggs went quiet. When furnace priests passed her in the tunnels, they turned their palms inward, hiding their fire souls as if emptiness could spread. So they gave her the work suited to a girl without flame. She cleaned the dead dragon vaults. She swept ash from beneath bones no one prayed over anymore. She washed soot from cracked relic glass. She carried copper bowls heavy with gray dust through corridors where the air tasted of burned prayers. She had spent half her life among dead things because the living dragons hated the silence she brought. Now, Lady Calyra Morven had dragged that silence into court. The ash-bound servant has corrupted the lower vault, Calyra announced, her white gold ceremonial gown glowing beneath the furnace chandeliers. 3 dragon embers failed after she entered. The western egg pit cooled, and the relic chamber of Avarion's heart was found covered in dead ash. Maren stood in the center of the hall with copper cuffs around her wrists, her gray work dress still stained from the vaults. Her dark hair was tied back with a strip of linen, though several strands had escaped and stuck to her damp cheeks. She had not been given time to wash. That was part of the cruelty. The court wanted her looking like what they called her, ash. Across the hall, Dragon King Theron Vare watched from the black ember throne. He did not look bored. That would have been easier to hate. He looked still, too still. Theron was built like the old dragon statues behind him, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, carved from restraint and command. Gold fire moved faintly beneath the black scales of his armor. His eyes, a deep molten amber, were fixed on Maren with a concentration that felt almost worse than contempt. He did not mock her. He also did not stop the trial. Lady Calyra turned toward him with perfect sorrow. By ember law, if an ash-bound touches a dragon relic, and the relic remains dead, she is marked dead ash and cast beyond the borders. If the relic blackens, she is executed for harming royal remains. Maren's mouth went dry. Beyond the borders meant winter, hunger, and wild drakes that hunted anything without fire. Execution meant the Hall of Embers would burn her body and scatter her name into the ash wells so no dragon could remember she had existed. Theron's voice finally crossed the hall. "Bring the heart." The words were quiet. They struck Maren harder than shouting. 4 priests carried the relic forward inside a glass firebox wrapped in copper bands. The box steamed, though no flame touched it. Inside lay Avarion's heart, black as volcanic stone, larger than a human skull, ridged with fossilized veins and bound in copper wire. Avarion had been the ancient dragon who guarded Verhold before the Old War. The court songs claimed he died beside Theron's mother, Queen Sereth, in the Battle of Red Ash. Maren had cleaned the chamber where his heart was kept. She had never touched it. But sometimes, when she swept near the glass case, she heard a sound like someone trying to breathe under stone. Calyra stepped closer. Her perfume was sweet enough to poison the air. "If you are innocent, servant, the heart will prove you merely empty." Maren looked at her. "And if it proves something else?" A small ripple moved through the court. Servants were allowed to answer when questioned. They were not expected to question back. Calyra smiled. "Then the king will judge what you are." Maren looked at Theron. For one breath, something shifted in his face. Warning, perhaps. Or guilt. It vanished before she could name it. The priests opened the firebox. Heat rolled across the hall, but it did not warm Maren. It seemed to bend around her, leaving her skin cold. One priest flinched when the flame along his sleeve dimmed as she stepped near. "Hands," Calyra ordered. Maren lifted her cuffed wrists. A guard unlocked the copper cuffs, not out of mercy, but so the court could say her touch had been free and visible. The metal fell away. Red marks circled her skin. She reached toward the dead dragon's heart. The hall held its breath. Maren wanted to refuse. She wanted to fold her hands against her chest and say she would not let them use her emptiness as proof of their law. But refusal would be called guilt. Terror would be called corruption. Silence would become confession. So she chose the only dignity left. She touched the heart before they could force her hand down. Cold shot through her palms. Not ordinary cold, buried cold. The kind that had waited years under ash, patient and furious. For a moment, nothing happened. Calyra's smile widened. Then the heart beat. Once. The sound rolled through Maren's bones. A deep, wet, impossible thud. The copper wires around the relic snapped tight. The glass box cracked. Ash beneath Maren's feet lifted from the floor, rising upward like black snow. Every furnace flame in the hall bent toward her and went blue at the core. The dead dragon's heart beat again. This time it matched her pulse, not as if it had chosen her, as if it had found something it had lost. Maren gasped, but no sound came out. The heart pulsed in her hands, heavy and alive, its black stone surface warming against her skin. Something answered inside her chest. Not flame, not yet, but the memory of flame buried too deep to burn. The dragon statues carved into the walls turned their heads. Stone necks grinding, gold eyes opening one by one. A noble screamed. Priests dropped to their knees. Calyra stumbled backward so fast her white gold train caught on the altar step. Theron rose from the throne. The throne fire behind him went dim. For the first time, the Dragon King looked afraid. Not of Maren. For here. He came down the steps fast, one hand extended. Put it down. The heart beat harder. Maren's knees weakened, but she held on. Why? Theron stopped. The question struck him like a blade because every king in that hall was used to being obeyed, and every ash-bound girl was used to being told she owned nothing, not even her hands. Maren looked at the heart, then at him. You let them make me carry it, she said. Theron's jaw tightened. No answer. Good. Let the silence accuse him. Calyra found her balance at the altar step. Her face had gone pale, but her voice sharpened instead of breaking. A dead heart does not wake for innocence, she said. It wakes for the hand that stole from it. The court turned back toward Maren with new fear. Calyra lifted one trembling finger toward the heart. This is not proof of purity. It is proof of contamination. Seal her before the long fire spreads. The heart beat a third time. The floor cracked beneath Maren's bare feet. From below the Hall of Embers came a low sound, older than the palace and deeper than any furnace. A dragon breathing in its sleep. Theron reached for the heart. The moment his fingers brushed the copper wire, gold fire lashed up his arm. He staggered, teeth clenched, the skin of his palm burning black at the edges. The heart rejected him, rejected the king. Maren stared. Theron looked at his wounded hand, then at her. Behind him, the largest dragon statue turned fully toward Maren and lowered its stone head. The court went silent. The dead dragon's heart beat once more in her hands. Then every dragon statue in the hall turned toward Maren. The dead dragon's heart did not call Maren chosen. It called her missing. The word did not enter the Hall of Embers as sound. It moved through bone, flame, copper, and ash, a deep pulse beneath every breath. Maren felt it strike the hollow place in her chest where everyone said a fire soul should have been. Missing. Not empty, not cursed, not dead ash. Missing. The difference nearly broke her. Avarion's heart beat again in her hands, heavy and warm now, its black fossil veins glowing faintly under the copper wire. The dragon statues did not bow to her. That would have made the court gasp, and priests reach for prophecy. They did something quieter. They listened. Stone heads turned. Gold eyes opened. The old carved dragons along the walls angled their snouts toward Maren, as if waiting for a word she did not know how to say. Their attention pressed against her skin harder than any accusation. She had lived unseen for so long that being heard by stone felt like standing naked before fire. Calyra recovered before anyone else. Of course she did. A dead heart does not wake for innocence, she repeated louder this time, turning panic into law before it could be named. It wakes for the hand that stole from it. Seal the ash bound before the relic forces long fire through the hall. The priests hesitated. Theron looked at them once. No one touches her. The command should have cut clean through the room. It did not. The throne fire behind him flickered, then dimmed further, shrinking low in its black iron basin. The royal flames along the walls bent toward Avarion's heart instead of toward the king. Even the gold fire under Theron's armor guttered once, as if his own blood had been forced to listen before obeying. The court saw. Theron saw them seeing. His jaw tightened, but he did not hide the burned hand the heart had given him. Blackened marks crossed his palm where the copper wire had rejected his touch. Blood welled beneath the burn, gold bright at the edges. Calyra seized the opening. The relic refuses royal correction. That is contamination. No, Theron said. Then command the heart to still. Silence spread. Maren looked at him over the pulsing relic. Do it, the court seemed to demand. Prove you are king. Prove the dead obey you before they begin obeying an ash-bound servant. Theron lifted his wounded hand. Avarion's heart beat once. The throne fire went almost black. Theron lowered his hand. For the first time, a murmur of fear moved through the noble tears. Calyra's face sharpened with triumph disguised as horror. You see, she has placed herself between king and relic. Under Ember law, that is not witness. It is theft. Maren's fingers tightened around the heart. The heat should have burned her by now. It did not. It lived against her palms like something wounded, pressing close, because it had nowhere else to go. Theron descended the last step from the throne and stopped outside the cracked circle of ash around her feet. Maren. Her name in his mouth startled her more than the beating heart. He knew it. Of course he knew it. Kings knew the names of traitors, generals, border lords, and future brides. Servants did not expect to be held in royal memory unless they had done something wrong. Maren lifted her chin. Do not say it like warning. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, perhaps. Good. You need to set the heart down, he said. You mean I need to put the evidence back where your court can lock it? Calyra inhaled sharply. You forget yourself. No, Maren said, and the heart beat harder, as if the word fed it. That is what everyone else has done. The Hall of Embers fell still. Theron looked at her with an expression she could not untangle: guilt, fear, recognition, and something more dangerous because it had no right to be tender yet. Maren did not let it reach her. You let them make me carry it, she said. You knew she wanted the relic to judge me. His wounded hand curled. I suspected the lower vault had been altered. By her? His gaze shifted to Calyra. The answer was there. Maren felt it land like ash on her tongue. So you used my emptiness because you feared what the heart might say to you. Theron did not defend himself. That was almost worse. Yes, he said. The word moved through the room cleanly. Not apology. Confession. Calyra turned cold. Your Majesty, do not indulge the servant's accusation. She is holding a royal heart under unlawful reaction. Theron did not look away from Maren. I let the trial begin. A priest whispered a prayer too late. The heart pulsed against Maren's palms, and the ash rising around her feet formed a circle that did not spread. Not plague, not corruption. Boundary. Theron's voice roughened. That debt is mine. Maren felt the words strike the wound his silence had made in her. They did not close it. She looked down at his burned hand. Then pay it by not commanding what rejected you. The court went rigid. No one spoke to a dragon king that way. Theron closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, he stepped back from the relic. Calyra's perfect face tightened. If the king refuses command, then Ember law passes judgment to the relic priests. Seal the ashbound. The priests moved. Avarion's heart opened its first black vein. The sound was not cracking stone. It was memory tearing through a sealed throat. Blue-white light leaked from the vein, thin at first, then brighter, casting the hall into shapes that did not belong to the present. The black glass floor became a battlefield under red ash. The dragon statues became living shadows with wings spread against a burning sky. A woman's voice echoed faintly, regal, desperate, drowned beneath fire. Theron Venpala. Mother, he whispered. The light sharpened. In the memory, Queen Sereth stood beneath a falling tower, one hand pressed to the bleeding chest of a vast ancient dragon, Avarion. Not dead yet. His black gold scales were split by weapons forged to bind rather than kill. His heart burned exposed beneath his ribs, enormous and wounded. Beside him stood a child, small, barefoot, covered in ash. Maren's breath stopped. She knew the child's hands. Tiny fingers reached toward the dragon's blood fire without fear. Avarion lowered his dying head. The child began to cry soundlessly. Calyra stepped backward. False memory. The heart beat once. The memory bent toward her. Calyra stopped moving. Maren stared at the little girl in the ash. That is not me. But her palms knew better. Her chest knew better. The hollow inside her answered like a locked room hearing its key outside the door. In the memory, Avarion opened his mouth. No roar came, only ember light. The dying dragon curved one claw around the child, hiding something bright beneath her ribs. Not a crown, not bloodline, not royal fire, a single living ember. Maren's knees weakened. The heart did not show her killing Avarion. It showed Avarion hiding something inside her. Then the black vein widened. Inside it burned the fire soul Maren had been told she never had. The fire soul Maren had been told she never had began burning through the dead dragon's heart toward her chest. It did not move like flame. It crawled like something wounded trying to find its way home. A thin ember thread stretched from the open black vein in Avarion's heart, bright blue at the center and gold at the edges. It reached across the narrow space between relic and girl, trembling in the air before it touched the hollow beneath Maren's ribs. The moment it found her, pain folded her in half. She did not scream. No sound came. Her body had lived too long without fire to know how to welcome it. Heat rushed under her skin in broken pieces. Her palms burned cold, her throat locked. The ash around her feet rose faster, circling her ankles, her knees, her waist, as if the hall itself were trying to bury her before the fire remembered how to burn. Inside her chest, the ember thread knocked once, then again like a lost child pounding on a door that had been sealed from the inside. Theron moved toward her. Avarion's heart beat hard enough to crack another copper band. The Dragon King stopped before touching her. He had learned that much. Not enough, but something. Maren, he said, and the restraint in his voice cost him. Tell me what it is doing. She looked up at him through watering eyes. The king who had let Calyra make a public test of her stood with his burned hand open at his side, blood and gold fire leaking from the wound where the heart had rejected him. He wanted to command. She could feel it in the way the throne fire behind him tried and failed to rise. Maren forced breath into her lungs. It is trying to come back. A tremor went through the priests. Calyra heard it and turned the moment into a blade. If the relic hid fire inside her, she said, voice clear and sharp, then she is not innocent. She has stolen royal property. The court shifted at once. There it was. Not panic, not accusation alone. Law. Calyra knew how to make fear sound official before anyone else could question it. She stepped closer, careful not to enter the ash ring. By ember inheritance, any royal dragonfire found inside an unmarked vessel must be extracted before it corrupts the bloodline source. Open her chest before the heart remembers how to burn through it. Maren's hands tightened around Avarion's heart. Open her chest. The words should have terrified her more than the fire. Instead, they clarified the room. Calyra did not want to prove Maren empty anymore. She wanted to take back what the heart had found. Theron's head turned slowly toward Calyra. Say that again. Calyra did not flinch. If she carries relic fire, she is an illegal vessel. She is a person. She became evidence when the heart answered. Maren laughed once, or tried to. It came out as a rough breath. Theron looked at her. She did not soften the blow for him. That is what your court does. It turns people into evidence when the truth is inconvenient. The ember thread pressed deeper. Maren's vision flashed white. Avarion's heart pulsed in her hands, and this time the message came not through sound, but through the rhythm of blood and stone. Do not give it back all at once. What had been stolen as a child could not return to a woman without learning her body again. Maren's knees hit the glass floor. Theron took one step and stopped himself so violently his boots scraped against the cracked ash. He looked as if every instinct in him had struck a wall. The heart pulsed again. A stolen fire forgets how to live inside flesh. The words rolled through the hall of embers. Priests crossed themselves. Nobles back from the ash ring. The dragon statues lowered their stone heads, not in worship but in warning. Maren clung to the heart. Then why is it coming back? The open vein widened. The hall vanished. Not fully, not gently. Memory burned over it. Maren saw the lower dead vault years ago, smaller, darker, filled with red ash and broken dragon bone. A child knelt in the ash, coughing, her little hands covered in soot. Maren knew those hands, knew the torn gray sleeve, knew the ache in the chest that had always been there, waiting for a name. Young Maren. Across from her lay Avarion, not whole, not dead, not yet. The ancient dragon's body was too vast for the vault. Half in flesh, half in ember memory, black gold scales split open by copper hooks. His heart burned, exposed beneath broken ribs, and beside him stood figures in white gold robes. Morvin robe. Calyra's family. A woman with Calyra's pale hair held a hooked blade over the child's chest. Empty vessels survive longer, the woman said. Cut the fire, soul clean, bind it to the heart, and the girl will grow harmless. Young Maren shook her head. Avarion moved. Even dying, he moved. One claw curled around the child, shielding her from the blade. His great eye opened, molten gold dimmed by pain. Not hers to cut, the dragon's memory rumbled. The Morvain woman smiled. Then keep it for her. The blade came down. Maren felt the cut in the present. Not across flesh, across absence. She bent over the heart, voiceless, as the memory showed the truth. Avarion had not stolen her fire. He had caught it when they tried to remove it completely. He had hidden it inside his own dying heart, because that was the only place the Morvins could not fully kill it. Theron watched the memory, with a face stripped of royal cold. Calyra's expression did not break. That was how Maren knew she had known enough. Not all of it, perhaps. Enough. The memory shifted. More children appeared in the vault. Not many. Enough to make the air turn cruel. Ash-bound children, all small, all quiet, each standing near a dead dragon relic, while Morvain priests measured the hollows in their chests. Some carried no fire soul. Some had already lost it. Some were not empty at all. They were emptied. Some held embers too faint to survive extraction. The Morvain woman pointed toward young Maren. This one here's the old heart. Use her first. Maren's stomach turned. Calyra's voice cut through the memory from the present. Convenient illusion, a relic protecting its contaminant. Avarion's heart beat so hard the glass floor cracked again. Theron stepped to the copper wire and placed his burned hand near it, not touching the heart, only the band that held it bound. Gold fire lashed toward him immediately. He took the burn without moving away. I will not command what my bloodline imprisoned, he said. The copper band split. One strip fell to the floor. Not enough to free the heart. Enough to make the memory sharpen. Young Maren, sobbing silently, pressed both hands to Avarion's wounded heart. The ancient dragon bent his head over her, and the ember he protected pulsed once between them. Then another sound entered the memory. A child crying from deeper in the vault. Maren froze. Avarion's heart beat unevenly. The fire soul inside the heart reached for Maren, then stopped, because something else was holding it from the other side. The black vein opened one more line. Inside Maren's stolen fire, a child's voice whispered, "Do not let them make you carry me too." Maren's stolen fire pulled toward her chest, but the child hidden inside it pulled away. The force nearly split her in two. Avarion's heart thudded in her hands, each beat dragging the ember thread closer to the hollow under her ribs. Heat pressed through her skin. Her bones answered with a pain so old it felt like memory. The fire wanted home. The place inside her wanted what had been taken. But within the flame, something small resisted with desperate strength, bracing itself against the return as if Maren's body were another cage waiting to close. "Do not let them make you carry me too." The whisper shivered through the black vein in the heart. Maren looked down. Inside the open seam, blue gold fire twisted around a shape no larger than a child. Not clear, not whole. Knees drawn close, head bowed, hands pressed against the inside of the heart, as if against glass. The fire soul that should have been Maren's curled around that child like a torn blanket. If Maren took it back now, she would not take only herself. She would take whatever they had hidden inside her stolen fire. Calyra saw the hesitation and struck. "There," she said, voice ringing through the hall of embers. "The vessel resists separation because there is more than one relic force inside her. This is no simple contamination. She is a multi-vessel." The priest recoiled from the ash ring. Maren did not know the law, but she heard the danger in the word. Multi-vessel. Another phrase that turned a person into a container. Another way to make cutting sound like caution. Calyra stepped toward the relic altar, white gold gown glowing in the blue furnace light. If one ashbound carried one heart, 12 ashbound could carry a kingdom of dragons. "Do you understand now why she must be opened? This is not one servant's curse. This is the shape of a weapon." Theron's burned hand tightened at his side. Maren saw the fury rise in him, and saw just as quickly how Calyra wanted it. If he answered with dragonfire, she would call him compromised by the relic. If he seized the heart, it would burn him again. If he commanded the priests, the throne fire might fail in front of every noble still watching his authority bleed. So Maren spoke before he could. "No one opens me." Her voice came out rough, small. Avarion's heart beat once in answer, and the ash ring around her feet rose higher, forming a wall no taller than her knees, but clear enough that the priest stopped. Calyra's eyes narrowed. "You do not decide what happens to royal fire." Maren looked at the child-shaped flame inside the heart. The hall went cold. Theron turned to her, not to correct, not to command, to listen. Maren forced herself to stand straighter, though her chest felt carved open from the inside. "If it were yours, it would have gone back to him." She nodded toward the king. The heart pulsed against her palms. Theron's face changed. The blow landed, and he accepted it. Calyra lifted her hand. "Prepare the ember knives." Morvain priests moved from the side pillars, not the royal furnace priests who had carried the heart, but Calyra's own bloodline attendants. Their white gold sleeves were lined in copper thread. Each one carried a hooked blade shaped, not for battle, but for entering a body carefully. Theron stepped toward them. Avarion's heart slammed a pulse through the floor. The dragon statues raised their heads. "Not enough," the heart warned. Theron stopped, breath hard through his teeth. Maren understood the rule before anyone explained it. Avarion would not let him take control. Not even to protect her. The ancient heart had been commanded by kings, bound by copper, fed into a throne. It would not survive rescue that wore the same shape as imprisonment. Theron looked at the nearest copper band wrapped around the heart. Then at Maren. "Ask it what I may break." The words stunned the court more than his rage would have. The Dragon King asking an ashbound girl for permission to act through a relic that had rejected his blood. Maren looked into the open vein. "What can he break?" Avarion's heart beat slowly. One band. Not the cage. Not the fire. Only one lie. Maren repeated it. Theron moved without hesitation. He placed his burned hand around the second copper band. Gold fire lashed up his arm, blackening the edge of his sleeve, splitting skin already raw from the first burn. He did not command it still. He did not curse. He only held until the copper turned red, then white, then cracked. The band broke. Theron dropped to one knee. A memory opened in the ash. Not long. Sharp. The lower vault appeared again, but this time Maren saw beyond Avarion's wounded body. She saw rows of small glass cradles filled with ember light. Each cradle held a failed vessel's fire soul, flickering weakly around a dead dragon scale or a bone shard. Morvain priests measured the flames. Some died while they watched. Some were poured into relic hearts. Some were sealed into copper eggs that never hatched. At the center of the vault stood one cradle larger than the rest. Inside it lay no human child. A hatchling, tiny, curled, made of black scale and wet gold light, its wings folded too tightly against its back. Its eyes were closed. Copper hooks pierced the ember around it, forcing its fire into the shape of a human child so it could be carried by a vessel without tearing the body apart. Maren's breath stopped. The child in the heart was not a girl. Not fully. Calyra's face went still. Theron saw it. "You knew." Calyra did not answer. The memory sharpened. The Morvain woman from Maren's childhood stood over the hatchling cradle. "If the queen learns the hatchling lived, she will burn the compact." Another priest asked, "And the child vessel?" The woman looked toward little Maren, sobbing beside Avarion. Let the Ashbound carry what remains. No one listens to Ash. Avarion roared in the memory, but the sound had been cut from him. The Morvanes had taken even that, burying the roar inside the heart with the hatchling. The memory collapsed. Maren staggered, but she did not fall. The fire soul inside Avarion's heart pulled toward her again. The hatchling child inside it pulled away harder, terrified. Maren understood. If she took back all her fire, she would drag the hatchling into her chest. She might survive for minutes, maybe hours. But the hatchling would become fuel, and the Morvanes would call that proof that ashbound vessels could carry dead dragon power. Calyra stepped into the silence. Now you see. She carries royal hatchling. Fire. Under Ember law, that makes her the property of the Hall. No, Maren said. The words shook. Still, she held it. She looked down into the heart, at the child shape pressing both hands against the inside of Avarion's prison. I will not take my fire if it means carrying you. The ember thread recoiled from Maren's chest. Pain tore through her as the stolen fire pulled back into the heart, but she let it go. Let her own missing flame retreat. Let the court see her choose emptiness over becoming another chamber for someone else's suffering. Theron's head bowed, as if the choice had struck him somewhere deeper than pride. Avarion's heart opened wider. The child inside the stolen fire lifted her face at last. Her eyes were not human. They were two newborn dragon flames. Then she pressed both hands against the inside of Avarion's heart. Do not take me into your body, she whispered. I am what they used to kill the queen. Queen Sereth's death did not enter the hall as memory. It entered as heat. The newborn dragon flames inside the child's eyes flared, and every furnace in the Hall of Embers bent backward from Maren, as if the fire itself had learned shame. Avarion's heart beat once, too hard, too deep, and the black glass floor beneath her feet filled with red gold cracks that spread toward the throne like veins remembering blood. Maren held the heart tighter because letting go felt suddenly worse than burning. The hatchling child inside the open vein pressed both hands to the inner wall of the relic. Her small face shimmered between forms. Girl, ember, dragon, child again. The Morvanes had forced her fire into something a human vessel could carry, but the shape never held for long. Wings flickered behind her shoulders and vanished. Tiny black horns glowed through her hair, then melted back into flame. I am what they used to kill the queen. The words pulsed through the hall again. Theron went still. Not royal still. Grief still. The kind that comes before a man realizes the story he built his life around was made from a lie. Calyra recovered first because Calyra always recovered where others bled. A dead dragon relic cannot testify to royal murder, she said, voice sharp enough to cut through the heat. Nor can a malformed hatchling, fire shaped by ash corruption. This is grief made spectacle. Maren looked at her. You are afraid of a child. Calyra's eyes flashed. I am afraid of what fools will call a child when it is a weapon. The Morvane priests lifted their ember knives again. Theron stepped between them and Maren. Avarion's heart thudded warning. He stopped before crossing the ash ring, jaw locked against the command his body wanted to give. The restraint burned through him. Maren could see it in the gold fire cracking under his skin. He wanted to strike. He wanted to seize the knives, silence Calyra, drag Maren away from the heart with both arms, and call that salvation. But Avarion would not accept salvation that looked like possession. Theron turned to Maren. What do you choose shown? The question shook the court more than fire. Maren swallowed against the heat filling her throat. She had almost taken back her stolen flame. She had almost dragged the hatchling child into her body, without understanding what it would cost. The old shame of emptiness still ached inside her, cruel and familiar. But now there was another ache beside it, the knowledge that her missing fire had been used as a blanket over someone else's prison. She looked into the opened vein. Show how they used her. Avarion's heart beat once. Memory opened across the hall like a wound in the air. The battlefield of red ash appeared beneath their feet. Not the polished version from court songs, not banners, glory, and noble sacrifice. This field was mud, smoke, dragonbone, and screaming horses running without riders. Above it, Queen Sereth stood in battle armor, blackened by ash, one hand raised toward the sky. Her hair was braided with copper rings. Her face was fierce and exhausted. Beside her towered Avarion in his full ancient form. enormous black gold wings torn, but still spread over the surviving army. Theron made a sound. He was younger than the grief in his face. "My mother," he said. Maren did not look away from the memory. Queen Sereth was not dying yet. She was winning. Avarion roared, and enemy fire shattered in the sky before it could touch the city behind him. Dragon soldiers rallied beneath his wings. The red clouds opened to morning. Then the Morvaines arrived. Not from the enemy line. From behind the queen, a younger Calyra's father stood among them, white gold robes hidden beneath war cloaks. In his arms he carried a copper vessel glowing with the hatchling's trapped fire. The little dragon child inside thrashed against the spell, forced into human-shaped flame, her mouth open in a cry no one heard. Queen Sereth turned. Horror crossed her face. "No," she said. "That hatchling was under my protection." Calyra's father bowed. "Your Majesty, the compact requires preservation of royal power. That is not preservation." He opened the copper vessel. The hatchling's fire burst outward, not toward the enemy, toward Avarion's heart. The ancient dragon convulsed. His wings slammed into the earth. Queen Sereth ran to him, pressing both hands against his chest as the stolen hatchling fire turned inside him like a hook. The spell had not killed Avarion from outside. It had made him burn against himself, using a child's living fire as the blade. Maren's stomach twisted. The hatchling had been weapon and victim at once. Queen Sereth reached for the copper vessel, trying to close it. "You used a newborn flame." Calyra's father looked almost sad. That made him worse. One hatchling to save a throne. One hatchling to enslave every dragon after him. She struck him with dragonfire. For a heartbeat, the battlefield blazed white. Then another figure stepped into the memory. King Eric Ver, Theron's father, crowned for war, face carved from fear. He did not strike Queen Sereth. He did not order her death. He looked away. That was the wound. While the Morvaines turned the hatchling fire deeper into Avarion's chest, while Queen Sereth screamed for the spell to be stopped, while the ancient dragon collapsed, trying not to crush his own army, the king looked away and let preservation become murder. Theron staggered back as if the memory had hit him. Calyra spoke quickly. "Your father chose the kingdom." Maren turned on her. "Your family chose the knife." The heart beat in agreement. Avarion's wounded body in the memory lowered his head toward Queen Sereth. She pressed her brow to his burning scales. The hatchling fire flickered between them, terrified and trapped. Then Queen Sereth did the only thing left. She opened her own fire soul and tried to pull the hatchling free. The backlash killed her. Not instantly, not cleanly. She fell against Avarion's heart with both hands, still trying to save the child used to destroy him. Avarion curled his body around her as the battlefield vanished under red ash. The memory shattered. The Hall of Embers returned. No one spoke. Theron stood with his burned hand at his side and his father's guilt across his face like a crown made of iron. Calyra lifted her chin, but her voice had lost its silk. The dead cannot govern the living. The Morvaine compact preserved dragon power when your house would have wasted it on sentiment. Theron looked at her. This time he did not reach for fire. He reached for the third copper band around Avarion's heart. Maren caught his wrist before he touched it. The contact shocked them both. His skin was fever-hot. Hers was ash-cold around the pulse of the heart. For one breath, the hall narrowed to his wounded hand beneath her fingers, and the terrible knowledge that she had stopped a king without fear. "Ask," she said. Theron's throat moved. Then he looked at Avarion's heart. "May I break one more lie?" The heart pulsed. Not yet. Maren felt the reason before it spoke. The hatchling child trembled inside the vein, her dragon flame eyes fixed on Calyra. "The next lie is hers." Calyra went Baala. Maren looked from the heart to the woman in white gold. "What did you keep from your father's compact?" Calyra's composure cracked just enough to show teeth. From within Avarion's heart, the hatchling child whispered again, weaker now. She did not inherit the compact. The ember around the child's small body darkened. She fed it, the fire in every Morvaine blade lit by itself. And each blade turned toward Maren's chest. The Morvaine blades turned toward Maren's chest, but they did not fly. They waited. That was worse. Each hooked ember knife hovered in the air above its priest's palm, its white gold edge lit from within by a flame that did not belong to the hand holding it. The blades had heard the hatchling child. They had heard the truth inside Avarion's heart, and now they pointed at the one body in the Hall of Embers that could carry what the Morvaines had spent generations learning to steal. Maren stood inside the ash ring, Avarion's heart heavy in her hands, and felt every knife measuring the distance between her ribs. Calyra's face had gone perfectly calm. Not innocent calm. Prepared calm. She fed it, Maren said. The hatchling child trembled inside the heart's opened vein, eyes flickering between dragon flame and child terror. Theron's gaze cut to Calyra. What does that mean? Calyra did not answer him. She looked at the priest instead. Complete the salvage rite. The ember knives moved 1 inch closer to Maren. Theron stepped forward. Avarion's heart struck the floor with one brutal pulse, and gold fire burst up between him and the ash ring like a wall. He stopped just before the flame could take his other hand. His jaw tightened, fury trapped behind the rule he had agreed to obey. He could not save Maren by force. Not without becoming another hand reaching for what her body carried. Maren saw the cost of that restraint in him. His shoulders shook once. His burned palm bled onto the black glass floor. But he stayed back. Good. She needed him there, not between her and the truth. Not yet. The knives drifted closer. Maren looked into Avarion's heart. Show what she fed. Calyra's eyes sharpened. No. The heart answered before the word finished. The open vein widened, and the Hall of Embers warped into another memory, this one not from the battlefield, not from Maren's childhood, but from a chamber beneath the wedding altar. The chamber was round, copper-lined, and full of dead dragon scales arranged like sleeping soldiers. Each scale rested in a shallow bowl of ash. Each bowl had a thin thread of fire running from it to a central basin. Calyra stood there, not as a child, as she was now, beautiful, white gold, composed, one hand resting on the basin while the other held a small ember knife over her own palm. Around her, Morvaine priests chanted softly. In the basin lay a piece of Avarion's heart. Not large. Esluor. Enough to pulse. Enough to hunger. Calyra cut her palm and let blood fall onto it. The dead dragon scales shivered. One by one they breathed. Not alive. Not free. Commanded. Maren's stomach turned. Calyra had not only protected the compact, she had been practicing with it. The memory sharpened. A priest bowed to her. 1 heart can wake 1 fallen dragon. 12 heart vessels can wake the buried army beneath the old ash fields. Calyra's mouth curved. Then we need 12 vessels. Most ashbound break before they carry a full pulse. Calyra looked down at the sliver of Avarion's heart. Maren Ashvyr did not. The memory vanished. The knives snapped forward. Maren twisted, but there was nowhere to go. The ash ring held her as much as it guarded her. A hook blade sliced through the air toward her chest. Theron moved at the same time. Not across the ring. Down, he drove his burned hand into the throne fire basin behind him. The hall shuddered. The fire had forgotten him. It had dimmed when the heart woke. It had bent toward Maren and away from royal blood. But now Theron did not command it to obey. He fed it. His own blood hit the black flame. The throne fire roared up around his arm, devouring the gold fire beneath his skin. Theron's face went white, but he did not pull away. The flame did not become his weapon. It became witness, bright enough to cast every moving blade into shadow. The knives slowed, not stopped, slowed. Maren understood. He could not break the right for her, but he could pay enough to give her a breath. 1 breath. She used it. She turned toward the hatchling child inside the heart. What do they want me to carry? The child pressed both hands against the inner wall of Avarion's heart. Not you. Her little voice shook. What is under the altar? The ember knives trembled. Calyra's calm finally cracked. Silence that relic. Maren ignored her. What is under the altar? Avarion's heart beat once. The answer rose through the floor. The wedding altar at the far end of the hall split open from base to crown. White gold stone cracked apart, revealing not storage, not sacred fire, but a deep shaft descending beneath the palace. From below came the sound of scales dragging over stone. Dead scales. Many? The noble court recoiled from the altar as cold ash wind rushed upward. Theron ripped his arm from the throne fire, skin blackened to the elbow, and turned toward the open shaft. His eyes were no longer only angry. They were grieving ahead of what he would see. Calyra lifted her chin. The kingdom needs dragons. The kingdom has dragons, Maren said. The kingdom has disobedient beasts and sentimental kings. Calyra's voice rang with sudden venom. Living dragons choose. Dead dragons can be used. The words dropped into the hall like poison. Avarion's heart gave a broken beat. The dragon statues lowered their heads, not to Maren this time, but toward the altar shaft, mourning. From below, something scraped closer. Maren felt the hatchling child recoil. Do not let them make you carry me too. Now she understood. Calyra did not only need Maren's body for Avarion's heart fire, she needed Maren to hold the hatchling's shaped flame long enough to wake the dead dragons below and make them obey the wedding rite. A living ash-bound vessel. A dead dragon army. A throne sealed by marriage. Theron saw it at the same moment. The wedding, he said. Calyra smiled, and it was terrible because the mask was gone. A queen who can wake the dead beneath your altar will never be set aside. Maren looked down at Avarion's heart. Her own fire waited inside it, still reaching for home. The hatchling child was tangled in it. If Maren took the fire back, she might gain enough power to stop the blades. She might also become the vessel Calyra needed. So she chose differently. Again, she pressed the heart against the cracked glass floor instead of her chest. No, she whispered to her stolen fire. Not yet. Pain tore through her as the ember thread recoiled, but she held the heart down, offering the floor, the hall, the witness of stone, anything but her body. Avarion's heart understood. The black vein turned toward the open wedding altar. The hatchling child lifted her flame eyes. For the first time she did not whisper. She roared. The sound was small and newborn and impossible, and every ember knife in the hall shattered into ash. The shaft beneath the wedding altar answered. A dead dragon's claw rose from the dark and gripped the edge of the altar stone. The altar stone cracked under the dead dragon's claw. One black talon dragged itself into the hall of embers, then another, each bone plated in dull scales that had no blood beneath them. Cold ash poured from the wedding shaft, like smoke from a grave. The court backed away in a broken wave, silk and armor scraping over glass, but Maren did not move. She could not. Avarion's heart pinned her palms to the floor with its pulse, and the hatchling child's tiny roar still rang through her bones. The thing beneath the altar was not alive, but it was not fully dead either. That was the horror. A skull rose from the dark, long and narrow, its empty eye sockets filled with pale furnace light. Copper hooks bound its jaw shut. White gold Morvain sigils were carved along its neck bones, each one threaded with a thin line of stolen fire. When it pulled itself higher, Maren saw dozens of dead dragon scales embedded into its spine, as if pieces of many bodies had been stitched together to make one obedient corpse. Theron stared at it with sick recognition. "Gravedrake," he whispered. Calyra's voice cut through the ash wind. "A preserved defense relic." "No," Theron said, "a war crime." Calyra smiled without warmth. "A weapon only becomes a crime when the wrong house commands it." The Gravedrake opened its sealed jaws as far as the copper hooks allowed. No roar came out. Only the grinding sound of old bones waiting for instruction. The Morven priests had lost their ember knives, but not their purpose. One of them staggered to the altar, pulled a copper ring from beneath his robe, and raised it toward the dead dragon. "By wedding fire," he began. Theron moved. He did not use the throne flame this time. His burned arm hung useless at his side, blackened to the elbow. Instead, he crossed the floor with a soldier's speed and struck the priest across the wrist with the hilt of his dagger. The copper ring flew free, skidding across the glass. The Gravedrake's skull turned toward him. Calyra's eyes flashed. "You would cripple the army meant to secure your reign? I would rather lose the throne than rule dead dragons." Maren heard the court absorb that. Lose the throne. Theron had said it in front of everyone. Not as poetry, not as devotion. As a price he understood might be demanded before dawn. Calyra heard it too. Then her gaze shifted to Maren. "Then the Ashbound will command it." The Gravedrake turned again, toward Maren. Avarion's heart beat so hard her wrists nearly gave. The hatchling child inside the vein recoiled, wings flickering through her fire shape. Not body, she pulsed. Do not let them use body. Maren understood too late. The Gravedrake did not need Calyra if it had the right vessel. The Morvanes had built it to answer dead heart fire. Avarion's heart held that fire. Maren's missing fire was tangled around the hatchling child. If the Gravedrake reached her, the right could use her body as a living bridge. Calyra stepped closer to the ash ring. One ash-bound girl can refuse a heart. Let us see if she can refuse an army. The Gravedrake lunged. Theron threw himself between them. Its skeletal head struck him full across the chest. He hit the floor hard, sliding through ash and broken copper. The court cried out, but the sound felt distant. Maren's whole world narrowed to the dead dragon lowering its hooked jaws toward the heart beneath her hands. Theron pushed himself up on one arm. Blood darkened his mouth. Maren, he said, move. She could not. Not because she was frozen. Because if she moved the heart toward herself, Calyra won. If she dropped it, the Gravedrake could feed on it. If she let Theron drag her away, Avarion's heart might close again around the hatchling and her stolen fire. She had one choice left. Not to carry. To refuse carrying. Maren pressed both palms harder to Avarion's heart and spoke to the dead dragon above her. You are not hungry, she said. The Gravedrake's skull paused inches from her face. Its empty eye sockets burned pale. Calyra laughed once. It has no mind to hear you. No, Maren said, but it has pieces. She looked at the scales stitched into its spine, each one taken from a dragon that had once had a name, a sky, a will. The Gravedrake was not one creature. It was an army of fragments forced into one dead shape. Maren looked into Avarion's open vein. Can they hear? The hatchling child pressed one flame hand to the inside of the heart. If you give one beat, Theron tried to rise. What cost? Maren did not look at him. Mine. No. The word came from him rough and immediate. She turned then, just enough for him to see her face. You do not get to forbid the price I choose. He stopped. Pain crossed his face. Not anger. Learning. Maren closed her eyes and let one pulse of her stolen fire return. Only one. It entered her chest like a coal placed inside a wound. Her back arched. Her throat opened, but still no voice came. Heat tore through her ribs, searching for a body it no longer knew. For one terrible second, Maren thought the fire would split her from the inside. Then Avarion's heart steadied it. The hatchling child steadied it. The single beat became sound. Not a word. Not a scream. A heartbeat. It rolled from Maren's chest into the floor, into the Gravedrake's claws, into every dead scale sewn along its spine. The Gravedrake convulsed. One scale cracked free. Then another. Each falling scale released a tiny flare of color. Blue, bronze, silver, green, black, ember red. Not enough to form dragons, enough to prove the fragments remembered being separate. The Gravedrake lowered its skull, not to obey, to listen. Maren gasped, shaking. The one returned beat still burned inside her, too large for the hollow it had entered. She could not hold many of those. Maybe not even two. Calyra's composure shattered into fury. Bind it now. A Morvane priest reached for the copper ring. Theron got there first. He picked it up with his burned hand. The metal seared into his skin. He did not drop it. Then he turned to the court. This ring was prepared for my wedding rite, he said, blood on his mouth, ash in his hair. So let the court witness what I was meant to marry. He crushed the copper ring in his fist. The Gravedrake screamed without a voice. Beneath the altar, more claws scraped upward. Not one. Many. Calyra's face went white with triumph and terror at once. The broken ring had not stopped the army. It had awakened the rest of it. From the shaft under the wedding altar, 12 dead dragons began climbing toward the Hall of Embers. 12 dead dragons climbed toward the Hall of Embers, and Maren's single borrowed heartbeat began to fail. She felt it gutter inside her chest. Not like a flame dying, like a living thing searching for air in a room that had been sealed for years. The one pulse she had taken from Avarion's heart still burned beneath her ribs, but her body did not know how to hold it. Heat scraped along her bones. Her hands shook against the black stone heart. The ash ring around her feet flickered between wall and dust, rising and falling with every uneven breath she forced into her lungs. The Gravedrake before her lowered its skull. trembling as more scales cracked loose from its stitched spine. It had heard her. Not enough to live. Enough to remember. It had never been one obedient beast. But below the wedding altar, the others were coming. Claws dragged over stone. Wings scraped against copper walls. Dead throats clicked where old hooks held their jaws shut. One by one, skeletal dragon heads rose into the blue-gold light, each assembled from stolen scales, relic bones, and pieces of long-buried fire. Their empty eyes did not look at Calyra. They looked at Maren. Calyra saw it and smiled through the ash. "You hear them, don't you?" she said. Her white gold gown was torn at the hem, her perfect hair loosened by heat, but triumph sharpened her into something almost radiant. "That is why the Morvains needed you. Not because you are powerful, because you are survivable." Maren's fingers curled around Avarion's heart. Survivable. Another word for useful. Another word for breakable, but not quickly enough to matter. Theron stood near the shattered copper ring, swaying from blood loss and burns. His right arm hung blackened from throne fire. His left hand bled where the ring had cut through his palm. Still, he kept himself between Calyra and the ash ring, not blocking Maren's choice, only standing where another blade might come first. Calyra turned her gaze to him. "Do you understand now? Your reign has been starving because living dragons choose when to obey. Dead dragons do not. 12 heart vessels, 12 buried drakes, 1 wedding bond, and Veyrhold would never fear rebellion again." Theron's voice came low. "You built an army under my altar. My family preserved what your mother was too sentimental to use." The nearest dead dragon hauled half its body into the hall. Black ribs rose through torn ash. Copper hooks glowed along its jaw. A dead wing unfolded with the sound of old banners ripping. Behind it, another skull pressed upward, and another, crowding the altar shaft like a grave trying to become a throne. Maren looked down into Avarion's heart. The hatchling child inside the open vein had curled tight, newborn dragon flame eyes squeezed shut. Maren's stolen fire circled her, restless and afraid, wanting home and fearing what home would make it carry. "How do I stop them?" Maren whispered. The hatchling's eyes opened. "Do not stop them." Maren went still. "Let them hear one another." The words entered Maren through the pulse she had taken. She understood, not fully, but enough. The dead dragons had been built as one army because their fragments had been kept from remembering their own separate grief. If she tried to command them, she would become Calyra's vessel. If Theron tried to command them, his bloodline would repeat the prison. If Avarion forced them silent, the heart would become a throne again. They did not need a ruler. They needed witness. Maren lifted her head. "Theron." He turned at once. The trust in that motion hurt. Not because he deserved hers, because he was beginning to offer his without demanding return. "I need the hall quiet," she said. Calyra laughed. "You cannot quiet a dead army." Theron looked at the court. No one speaks. This time his command cracked halfway through the chamber. The royal fire did not rise to carry it, so he did something else. He removed the black ember signet from his finger and threw it onto the glass floor before the throne. The sound was small. The meaning was not. "I suspend royal command over the Hall of Embers," he said, "until this witness is complete." The court froze. Calyra stared at him as if he had cut open his own crown. "You cannot suspend what makes you king." Theron's burned face did not change. "Watch me." The throne fire behind him went out. Not dim. Out. Darkness dropped over the black ember throne, and for the first time in Maren's life, the hall belonged to no command. The dead dragons stopped climbing. Even Calyra did not speak. Maren closed her eyes. She pressed Avarion's heart to the glass floor and let the one pulse inside her chest answer the fragments around them. Not a ruar. Not a spell. A listening. The heartbeat moved through the hall in a low wave. It touched the first gravedrake's broken scales, then the second, then the 12 bodies still rising from the altar shaft. Each stitched relic answered with a different rhythm. A bronze pulse, slow and mournful. A silver pulse, sharp as winter. A green-black pulse that shuddered like forest fire in rain. None of them matched the Morvain rite. None of them matched the throne. The dead dragons had names once. Maren could not hear the names yet, but the heart could. Avarion's heart opened another vein. Calyra stepped back. No, Maren did not look at her. You wanted an army. The first gravedrake's stitched spine split. One dead scale fell, then another, then dozens, each piece releasing a small burst of colored fire that drifted toward the others of its kind. The assembled corpse began to come apart, not collapsing, not dying again, but separating into the dragon fragments that had been forced into one shape. The other dead dragons trembled. Their hooks strained. The hatchling child inside the heart pressed both hands to the vein and whispered, "Now." Maren understood the cost. If she gave a second heartbeat, she might not hold herself together. If she did not, the fragments might fall back into obedience the moment Calyra found another ring, another blade, another law. Theron saw the choice reach her face. He did not say no. He stepped beside the ash ring and placed his burned hand on the dead thronefire basin, not to reignite it. To keep it cold, "I will hold the throne silent," he said. Maren took the second heartbeat. Fire tore through her chest. This time, sound came with it. A deep, broken pulse rolled out of her mouth. Not human, not dragon, something between witness and wound. The 12 dead dragons convulsed at once. Copper hooks snapped from their jaws. Stitched spines split apart. Colored fires burst upward and circled the hall like souls remembering their skies. Calyra screamed, "Bind them!" But no knife moved. No ring answered. No throne fire rose. The dragon fragments turned in the air, no longer an army, not yet free. Their lights gathered above Maren, forming a vast shape of wings made from broken colors. Then, Avarion's heart beat beneath her hands. The colored fires bent toward the wedding altar. The stone cracked deeper. Below it, something enormous opened one eye. Not dead, buried. The hatchling child began to cry. And from under the altar, Avarion's missing body breathed Maren's name without sound. The wedding altar did not collapse. It peeled open. White gold stone split in slow, unwilling layers, shedding ash and old copper dust, as if the palace itself had been built over a wound and ordered never to bleed. The 12 dead dragon fragments circled above the hall of embers in broken colors, not yet free, not yet gone. Their lights trembled each time. Maren's second heartbeat faltered inside her chest. She tasted smoke. Her knees shook. Avarion's heart lay beneath her palms, warmer now, alive in a way that frightened her more than its death ever had. The 2 beats she had taken from her stolen fire burned in her body like coals in a house that had forgotten how to hold a hearth. Every breath hurt. Every breath taught the fire her ribs, her blood, her throat. Theron kept one burned hand on the dark throne fire basin. The throne stayed cold because he forced it to stay cold with his own blood, not command. His face had gone pale from the cost, but he did not move. The court had watched him suspend royal authority. Now they watched him bleed to keep it silent. Calyra watched too, and smiled. Maren saw it and knew the worst thing in the room had not been revealed yet. From beneath the altar came another breath. This time, the glass floor shivered. A massive shape shifted under the split stone. Black gold scales, dulled by years of burial, pressed against the opening. A ridge of ancient spine rose through ash. One enormous wing, folded and bound in copper root, dragged against the underside of the altar. Avarion's body had not rotted. It had been kept beneath the wedding stone like a beast beneath a crown, fed just enough stolen heart fire to remain usable and never enough to wake. The hatchling child inside the heart sobbed without sound. Maren looked down into the open vein. "What do they need from me?" The child's flame eyes lifted. "Bridge," Calyra answered before the heart could. "They need a living body between dead heart and buried flesh." She stepped over a line of cracked stone, her white gold gown glowing with reflected dragonfire. "That is all you ever were meant to be, Maren. Not queen, not savior, not chosen. A bridge that survived long enough to be useful." Theron's head turned. "Enough." Calyra ignored him. "The wedding would have made it lawful. My bloodline holds the heart. His bloodline holds the throne. Your ash-bound body holds the passage. With all 3 joined, Avarion rises under royal command." Maren's fingers pressed into the heart's ridges. Theron removed his hand from the basin and staggered one step toward Calyra. The throne fire tried to kindle behind him, sensing anger, but he forced it back into darkness. There will be no wedding. Calyra laughed softly. You think refusal matters now? Your father signed the preservation compact. Your throne has fed on Avarion for years. Your court witnessed the heart beating in her hands. The rite has already begun. She lifted her wrist. A hidden bracelet of copper thorns tightened around her skin. Blood welled between the links and dropped onto the cracked altar floor. The buried body beneath them convulsed. Avarion's heart jerked under Maren's hands. The ember thread between the heart and her chest pulled tight, and for one terrible second, Maren felt herself stretched between the relic in her hands and the body waking under the altar. Not carried. Used. Made into a road. Theron moved toward her. Maren shook her head. He stopped. The fact that he stopped mattered. It did not save her. It gave her room to save herself. She looked into the heart. If I am the bridge, can I close? Avarion's answer came slowly. A bridge may close. A witness must choose what crosses first. Calyra's eyes narrowed. Do not listen to it. A dragon heart speaks in grief. Grief burns kingdoms. No, Maren said. People who fear grief build prisons under altars. The colored dragon fragments above the hall flared. The words had struck something true. Maren turned her face toward the buried body. Avarion, what do you want returned first? Calyra stepped forward. It has no wants. Its heart is in your hands, and its body belongs to the throne. Avarion's buried body breathed again. The sound pushed ash outward in a hot wave, forcing Calyra back 2 steps. Then the heart pulsed in Maren's palms. Not fire. Memory. The altar vanished into red ash. Maren saw Queen Sereth again, not on the battlefield this time, but beneath the palace after the war. She was dying. Blood darkened her armor. Her hands were burned to the bone from trying to pull the hatchling fire out of Avarion's heart. Beside her, Avarion lay half-conscious, his heart already cut from his chest and sealed in copper. King Eric stood at the chamber door, face gray with horror. Calyra's father knelt beside the severed heart. The body can be preserved, he said. The heart can power the throne. The hatchling fire can wake what we bury. Verhold will never fall. Queen Sereth lifted her head. Her voice was weak, but it carried enough fury to make the memory tremble. You are not preserving dragons. You are teaching death to obey. Eric whispered, Sereth, the kingdom. She looked at him, and the grief in her eyes was worse than hate. If you let them bind him, our son will inherit a throne that feeds on a friend. Eric did not answer. So Queen Sereth reached into Avarion's open chest and placed the last of her own fire where his heart had been. Not enough to save him. Enough to keep one part of him from obeying. The memory shattered back into the Hall of Embers. Theron was staring at the opened altar. His mother's last fire was not in the royal tomb. It was inside Avarion's buried body, holding the ancient dragon back from becoming the weapon Calyra wanted. Calyra's bracelet bled harder. Then let the queen's sentimental fire burn out. The copper roots around Avarion's body tightened. Maren felt the bridge inside her forced open another inch. The hatchling child screamed. Theron crossed to the altar before anyone could stop him. He placed his burned hand on the wedding stone, over the Vare crest carved there, and pressed until blood filled every line of the royal mark. I renounce the Morvain wedding compact, he said. Calyra's face went white. The altar cracked deeper. Theron's voice did not rise. I renounce any throne, right fed by Avarion's heart. I renounce any crown that requires Maren Ashvyr to carry what my bloodline buried. The Vare crest split under his hand. The cost struck him immediately. Gold fire tore from his armor and vanished into the dead throne basin. His knees hit the floor. Across the hall, the black ember throne cracked from seat to crown. Calyra screamed, You would break your kingship for an ashbound? Theron looked at Maren. No, he said through blood. For the truth she should never have had to carry. Maren's chest hurt. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the bridge inside her stopped tearing. Avarion's heart opened one final black vein. Beneath the altar, the ancient dragon's buried ribs spread apart. Where his heart should have been, Queen Sereth's last fire still burned. And inside that fire, someone was still holding the hatchling's broken wing. Queen Sereth's last fire tightened around the hatchling's broken wing, and the entire Hall of Embers bent toward the wound. Maren felt it in the stolen beats inside her chest. The first beat still burned low, teaching her body how to remember warmth. The second beat shook with every breath, too large for her ribs, too old for her blood. Both answered the queen's fire beneath the altar as if it were not dead at all, but waiting. Avarion's buried body stirred, not rising, asking. The ancient dragon's ribs opened wider beneath the wedding stone. Copper roots snapped one by one, each break releasing a burst of old ash and gold sparks. Inside the hollow where his heart had been, Queen Sereth's final flame curled around the hatchling child's wounded wing, holding it with impossible tenderness. The hatchling was smaller there, not the fire-shaped child inside the heart, but a newborn dragon barely formed, black-scaled and trembling, one wing twisted by the Morvain spell that had used her as a blade. Maren understood at once. The hatchling had not killed the queen. The queen had died holding the weapon until it remembered it was a child. Calyra saw the understanding reach the court and moved before it could become law. She tore the copper-thorn bracelet from her wrist and threw it into the open altar. Blood scattered across Avarion's buried ribs. The Morvain sigils along the copper roots flared white gold, and the 12 dragon fragments circling above the hall jerked downward as if hooked by invisible chains. "If the wedding compact is renounced," Calyra said, voice shaking with fury, "then the preservation right passes to blood salvage. Morvain blood calls what Morvain law preserved." The dead fragments screamed in color. Maren dropped to one knee, both hands still braced on Avarion's heart. The bridge inside her tried to open again, wider this time, forced by Calyra's blood. The hatchling child cried out from inside the heart, and Queen Sereth's fire flickered under the altar. Theron tried to rise from beside the cracked Vair crest. He failed. The cost of renouncing the compact had torn something royal out of him. His armor no longer glowed. The throne behind him sat split and dark. Blood ran from his palm into the broken floor, but no king's fire answered him now. Calyra smiled through tears. "Look at your king, Maren. He made himself powerless for you. Noble, useless. Now choose. Take back all your fire and become strong enough to stop me, or let the dead dragons become mine." The offer struck the hollow in Maren like a hook. All her fire, her voice, her warmth, the missing thing she had been punished for not having. If she took it, perhaps she could burn Calyra's right apart. Perhaps she could stand whole at last. Perhaps no one would ever call her ashbound again. Inside the heart, the hatchling child pressed both hands to the vein. "Do not take me into your body." Maren closed her eyes. The old shame rose in her, gray and bitter. Years of servants turning from her cold hands, priests hiding their palms, children whispering dead ash when she passed. The cruel relief in every noble face when the trial began, because finally the court would prove that her emptiness was her fault. She wanted her fire back. She wanted it so badly she hated the wanting. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the hatchling's broken wing held in Queen Sereth's flame. "No?" Maren whispered. Calyra's smile vanished. Maren lifted Avarion's heart from the floor. It beat hard enough to shake her arms. "I will not become another place where you store someone else's pain." The heart answered. The two beats inside Maren's chest struck together. Not enough to make her whole. Enough to let her choose. She turned toward the open altar. "Avarion, take back what is yours first." Calyra shouted. "It has no heart to take it." Maren looked down at the relic in her hands. "Then I will carry it only as far as the door." Theron's head lifted. "Maren," he said, voice rough with warning. She looked at him, and for one moment the hall, the dragons, the blood, and the broken throne faded behind the agony in his face. He knew the cost. If she carried Avarion's heart to its body, even as a bridge, the fire might tear through her. He wanted to forbid it. She saw the words struggle behind his teeth. He did not say it. Instead, Theron placed his wounded hand flat against the cold floor and bowed his head. "What do you need?" The question steadied her. "Not love, not forgiveness, not yet. Respect. Keep the throne cold," she said. His jaw tightened. "Until it breaks, let it." Theron pressed both hands to the floor before the dead throne and held the last of his royal blood against the dark stone. The cracked throne groaned behind him, but no fire rose. Maren stepped over the broken ash ring. Every step toward the altar burned. The two returned heartbeats inside her stumbled. Avarion's heart grew heavier. No longer a relic. No longer proof, but a living grief trying to return to a body that had been used too long. Calyra rushed at her with a shard of copper root. The first gravedrake fragment struck the floor between them, not as a beast, as scattered scales, each one burning with a different color, forming a barrier of remembered dragons. Calyra stumbled back. Maren reached the altar. Queen Sereth's fire rose to meet her. It did not burn. It recognized the choice. Maren lowered Avarion's heart into the hollow between the ancient dragon's ribs. For a moment nothing happened. Then the heart beat in its own body. Once, the sound tore every Morvain sigil from the floor. Twice, the 12 dead dragon fragments broke apart into free fire, rising toward the ceiling like souls finding sky. 3 times, the hatchling child inside the heart unfolded, no longer forced into human shape. A tiny black gold dragon climbed from the opened vein, trembling, one wing still crooked, eyes bright with newborn flame. Queen Sereth's last fire wrapped around her and then released. Avarion opened his eyes beneath the altar. The Hall of Embers fell to its knees. Maren did not. She could not. If she bent, she would fall. Avarion's gaze found Calyra. The Morvain woman backed away, all white gold arrogance stripped from her face. "We preserved you." Avarion's voice filled the hall without sound. "You taught death to obey." The freed dragon fragments circled Calyra. They did not burn her flesh. They burned the Morvain rights out of her blood, every stolen command, every compact, every dead heart law passed from hand to hand until cruelty looked like inheritance. Calyra screamed as her white gold fire went gray and fell from her skin like ash. When it ended, she lived, powerless, remembering. Theron crawled to the foot of the broken throne as it split apart behind him. He looked at Maren, at Avarion, at the hatchling now tucked beneath the ancient dragon's jaw. "What do you want done with the throne that fed on your fire?" he asked. Maren's chest still felt hollow, but not empty. The 2 heartbeats remained, small and unsteady, hers to learn slowly. Her full fire soul had not returned. Not yet. That was mercy. That was law she chose for herself. She looked at the dead throne. "First," she said, and her voice came out rough, cracked, alive. "It learns to go cold." The last ember in the throne died. Dawn entered the Hall of Embers through shattered glass. Maren stood with soot on her dress, burns on her palms, and a voice the court had never heard before. The dragons did not bow. They listened. Theron lowered his head before her, not as a king claiming a savior, but as a man beginning the long work of answering for what his throne had allowed. Maren looked at Avarion's heart beating beneath the altar, no longer chained, no longer useful, only alive. Then she spoke her own name before the whole court, Maren Ashvyr. This time, the fire did not leave her. It answered,